Yep, so we're live. Hello, everyone. I hope you all are doing well. Thank you so much for joining this session and for joining us at Remote Fest. I'll quickly introduce myself and the amazing speaker that we have. My name is Hamza Tahir. I'm the Developer Relations Manager, head of and at Remote Base. Together I have at this session Sean Falconer, who's head of developer relations at Skyflow. Thank you so much, Sean, for having for joining us at this amazing session.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. So just without wasting any time, because we have very limited time, just getting back to the topic, which is this is a fireside chat. The topic is balancing data privacy and security while creating a great developer experience. But before we actually tap a little digger into a bit more into it, I'll just quickly talk about the background of this talk or this topic, which is for the past 20 years, consumers have been giving up their personal information to companies to buy products, create accounts, get medical assistance, fulfill prescriptions, and so on. We've all shared our personal data at some point, right, with some of the companies or businesses out there, and we blindly trust that those businesses are protecting our data, or those websites, or all of those companies out there. Yet, if you do a quick Google News search for data breaches, you'll be amazed, and you'll quickly learn that most companies aren't doing a very great job with the security of our data, right? There's about $56 billion lost to fraud and identity theft every year, which is really significant. However, just coming back to the topic, and companies like Skyflow, who's built around such challenges. I would love to give stage to Sean to talk about more about this challenge and tell us more about Skyflow, how you guys are addressing it at Skyflow, this problem.
Yeah, so there's essentially as you mentioned, there's this big problem that's happening where companies are constantly being in the news essentially for data breaches and data leaks. And actually, my father sent me a news article this morning about IKEA in Canada having a data breach this past week, and Heroku had a data breach this week. So I think when you see these types of things, especially if you're in the technology industry, you naturally ask the question of why is it such a hard thing for these different companies to protect their data? And it really comes down to a simple answer, which is it's not their job. Their job is to create a ride sharing app or serve videos online, or in the case of IKEA, to manufacture and sell furniture. And it's just if you stored all your money that you earn in your house, you probably couldn't do a great job of protecting it. So essentially you rely typically on a bank to do that service for you. And in many ways, Skyflow is like a bank, but for your customers' PII, or personally identifiable information, banking information, healthcare information. And we provide that solution as a zero trust data privacy vault, essentially delivered as an API. And our goal is to make privacy as easy as payments in Stripe or sending an SMS in Twilio.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you so much for addressing those problems, and of course, all of these companies out there, not just some of the traditional businesses or companies that are non-tech, right? The data problem is actually everywhere, especially in this era, or in this decade where we're living, where there's literally everything is on internet, right? Either you want to do groceries, either you want to get a job, a remote job, sharing your data, applying for a job. Literally, it's this new world is not driven by food or anything anymore. It's actually driven by data, right? And companies like Skyflow and other who's trying to solve these challenges and making data more secure. That's a very significant step. I just have a few questions on top of my mind. I would like to start with, why do you think data privacy is really hard for companies, right? You mentioned about IKEA, being struggling with it, but just a little bit more on that front.
Yeah, so I think there's a couple of reasons. And like I mentioned when I was talking about Skyflow, the simple answer is it's not their job. If you take in the case of IKEA is a furniture company. They don't necessarily have the resources, time, energy, and expertise to solve this problem. And the other challenge is that historically, data privacy and data security has really been an afterthought for businesses. It typically happens after a growth phase or after a business ends up essentially in the front page of the New York Times for a data breach. And at that point, a lot of the damage has been done, and it's a much harder problem to solve. And but I think times are changing in a lot of ways. There's both consumer demand for data privacy, and then there's also governmental regulatory demand that's being put on businesses to start to solve some of these problems.
For sure, for sure. Thank you so much for explaining that, and giving the answer to that. And just talking, just going a bit more on the tech front on this. Do you think like there's another question why that's like on top of my mind, why an API for privacy, right? Like if there's like a lot of there are frameworks, right? There are there are technology companies that are working or using a certain certain language or something, but why creating an API or something for like this?
Yeah, that's a great question. So when I worked at Google in the past, I worked on a product called RCS Business Messaging. And RCS stands for Rich Communication Services, essentially the evolution of SMS. It gives WhatsApp-like messaging over a carrier-based channel to your default messaging app. And RCS Business Messaging was the API for businesses to send these rich messages to their customers. And RCS is a super complicated protocol. You need to understand SIP protocol, MSRPs, IMS network, RCS universal profile, all this like carrier specific stuff. And the spec alone is like hundreds of pages long. And as an application developer, like I shouldn't have to care about any of that stuff. What I care about is sending a message to a user on behalf of my business. And essentially the RBM API makes that possible. It abstracts away all that underlying complexity. Similarly, I think privacy and security are a super complicated space on the surface for people who are approaching those problems not as non-experts. And there's hundreds of privacy laws. So, why should I need to know which 18 fields of PII need to be de-identified for something like HIPAA compliance, or what encryption I need for PCI compliance, or the ins and outs of modern encryption technologies like homomorphic or partial homomorphic encryption? And the answer is I shouldn't need to know any of those things. I should be able to let experts figure that stuff out, hiding all that complexity behind a simple API. And companies have done this for payments, for telephony, for physical mail, and many other things. So why not privacy? Essentially, you let companies focus on innovation and building features for their customers, or in the case of IKEA, building and selling furniture, and not on the complexity of securing their customer-sensitive data. Let's just offload that to a company where that does have the expertise, like a company like Skyflow in my case, and they can handle the complexity, making it easy for you to essentially integrate and serve your customers better.
Yeah, I feel like I can actually relate to some of these problems, but just to add more to what you said, like if companies can come up with like or tech companies can come up with like APIs or frameworks or tools online for payment APIs for like for other stuff, why can't for API for security as well, right? Because there's so many developers out there who are using technologies like React Native or Flutter to create thousands or millions of apps, right? Like every year, and they're just super focused on one thing or to create stuff, right? And then if there's like these applications or mobile applications or like just sending the data either in the form of text or video, the privacy is everywhere, right? And they're using different APIs. For example, Firebase API for in order to like send the messages. They should not know about like what's going at the back end, right? If the security should be handled by the platform itself. There's TensorFlow's APIs. There's like a lot of APIs out there. So there should be this addressing this API concern for privacy is also like really major, and which brings me to another question of mine, which I would really like to to know as well. What are some of the challenges that you guys face while designing or while creating solutions for data privacy or these APIs?
Yeah, so I think there's a balance that has to be met in terms of creating something that's easy to use from like a developer's perspective while still making it super secure. And additionally, there's this perception that privacy is a complicated space. So that's like I think like a barrier to entry that you kind of have to overcome. So some of the things that we've tried to do to address these challenges is really bake in a lot of the best practices as the default experience into the product. So secure by default, solution focused, like understand the common use cases that people are trying to solve in the space, and then provide as much out of the box configuration as possible. And one of the key sort of insights that has led to a lot of innovation on our end that makes things easy is that in the privacy space and the type of data that companies are storing, when it comes to like sensitive customer data, it's very specialized. It's like a reasonably narrow set of data, and the amount of sort of PII, banking data, healthcare data that people store is fairly small and fairly unique. And then the other thing is that a lot of PII, like someone's phone number or social security number in the US, we call those things a number, but they're not really numbers. You wouldn't multiply two phone numbers together. They're really a data structure made of specific components. So a phone number has a country code, an area code, a 3-digit, central number, a subscription number. And because if you understand what that data is and what data companies are storing, it tells you a lot about the types of use cases you're going to do with that data. So if you're storing someone's credit card number, well, there's only a few different legitimate uses of a credit card. And our technology, our Vault technology, essentially understands the semantics of these different underlying data structures and can provide out of the box schemas, connectors to third parties, security and privacy controls based on that understanding it, making so a non-expert in the privacy space can do the right things and be up and running quickly. So our goal is really to make the default experience the best practices.
Yeah, thank you so much for such a detailed explanation. Before we wrap up the session, I just wanted to just quickly get this answer about this last question. I know we're a little over on time, but I feel like this topic is super important. I just wanted to ask, like, why companies or big companies or small startups should care about data privacy, right? When they have like tons of it, right? Like, why they should care about its privacy, right?
I think there's a couple of reasons. The first one, of course, is there's a business reason. So if companies are collecting certain types of data, like banking or credit card data, healthcare data, or doing business in certain countries, then that data is regulated by certain laws, and the company has to essentially comply with those laws or regulations if they want to continue doing business. And then outside of the regulated industries, if a company's customer data is compromised through a data breach, then that's just expensive for the business. Like, it hurts trust with their customers, is bad for their brand. But I think the bigger reason that all companies should care about this, and basically all people should care about it, is there's also a moral reason. Like, data privacy is a fundamental human right. Yeah. And as a business, you should care about doing what's right for your customer. And we should be striving to build essentially respectful systems. And what's respectful and right for consumers is to make sure their data is protected.
And thank you so much, Sean. I believe that was really helpful for the developers and for the general audience as well. I think we should definitely talk about more of on this topic in the next sessions that we'll hopefully do. But thank you so much for your time for the session. We had the limited time, but thank you so much for coming at the Remote Fest and for giving us your time.
Thank you, and I hope everyone has a great conference. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you so much. Have a great rest of your day. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.